Hi everyone, welcome back to The Bear, the Pod, a podcast about the Emmy award-winning show The Bear, written by Christopher Stower. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know if you noticed, but the intro is a little bit different than what I usually say. I usually say written and directed by Christopher Stower, but this episode in particular that we're breaking down in this episode of The Bear, the Pod is not directed by Christopher Stower, and many of the episodes going forward are directed by not Christopher Stower. So I'm going to change that intro from now on, and then we'll clarify the director later on in the podcast, which is actually what I'm going to do right now. So we are breaking down season 1, episode 3, Brigade. And this episode was directed by Joanna Calo, who is a producer on The Bear. And she's also a prolific TV writer. She has a few credits, including BoJack Horseman, Hacks, The Babysitter's Club, just to name a few. And of course, she directed this episode of The Bear we are going to break down today. She also directed a few more episodes in the upcoming seasons of The Bear. So I'll let you know when those come up. But one thing I wanted to just kind of point out in the beginning, I'm just going to kind of allude to it, but I really appreciate the fact that it seems that Joanna seems to direct like the episodes that include Sydney more, or that focus on Sydney's character more. And I just want to say that I appreciate that, and I definitely see the difference in the vision when we're emphasizing Sydney specifically. I think they do such a good job with Sydney's character. I mean, they do a great job with all the characters on The Bear. That's like that. It's a character-driven show. It truly is. That's like the excellent thing about The Bear is the character writing. But I specifically appreciate Joanna's direction, especially when it comes to Sydney's character. So that's all I'll say about that for now. I'll definitely get more into that as we get to more episodes directed by Joanna Calo. But yeah, just wanted to kind of lead with that, let you know it's a different director. Yeah, that's one of the first things I noticed about like when I was watching the episode. I was like, I need to check the director, because there was some like specific shots, especially, we'll get into them, but at certain parts where I was like, oh, this is like a really interesting choice. And I like kind of didn't even think about the fact that Christopher Stower did not direct all the episodes. Like I knew that because I've seen The Bear 1,000 times, read the credits 1,000 times, but I didn't look at them before rewatching it again. And I thought it was funny how I noticed like an actual difference between certain shots, certain direction for the actors. So I really enjoyed this episode. Spoiler alert, it's one of my favorites. I mean, not my absolute favorite, but I mean, I it's hard for me to pick a favorite of The Bear because I kind of love every episode for different reasons. But this was a super fun episode. So there's not any significant news about The Bear that's come out recently. If y'all know any news, comment it below. If you're watching the YouTube video, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can go to our YouTube community tab and comment there. I would love to hear from you. If there's something you want me to specifically talk about on the podcast, just let me know and I'll definitely do that because I love talking about The Bear. So yeah, just let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about at length, any interviews, Q&As, things like that, and I'll definitely do that. But yeah, with that, I want to go ahead and jump into the episode. So we're breaking down season 1, episode 3 of The Bear, called Brigade, written by Christopher Stower and directed by Joanna Calo. So the episode opens with a scene of Carmy. We're kind of getting some ASMR action. He's walking through the grass and we hear like the crunching of his footsteps. It's honestly kind of nice for the ears. And we see him looking out into the sunset. He is wearing a hat, which isn't of note, I guess. He's looking into the sunset and the music is swelling in the background, and we hear a voiceover of Mikey saying, "Let it rip, buddy," which becomes significant. And then we're on to the next scene where we're kind of jumping into the action of the show. Carmy is at an Al-Anon meeting, which we kind of talked about in the last episode. This is what Sugar was requesting that Carmy went to after she heard about all of his troubles and like his nightmares and certain things that he was experiencing. And she was like, go to the thing, which we learned the thing was Al-Anon at the end of last episode when he got a text from Sugar. It was a link to Al-Anon. And so we see Carmy kind of taking action, which I like. I like to see people take action when it comes to mental health and things like that. So Carmy is at Al-Anon and we see a woman talking about her experiences with her husband who was an addict, which is what Al-Anon is. It's for people who are related to an addict in some significant way. And the actress is none other than Molly Ringwald, who is like literally an icon. If that name doesn't ring a bell, let me just tell you, she was Claire in The Breakfast Club and Samantha in 16 Candles. Like, and that's all you need to know about her iconic status. Like, can we say 90s queen? Like, awesome. So that is who the actress is that's giving this kind of monologue about her husband, who was an addict. And she says a lot of like really significant things, kind of just like how she kind of knew it was her fault and certain things were her fault and there were certain things she couldn't control about her husband's addiction. And then the main line I think that we're supposed to take away from this monologue is, because it comes full circle in the episode, is she says, all I can do is keep my side of the street clean and remove myself from any situation that is or can become toxic. And after she says that, we get a close-up on Carmy, and then it cuts, a very dramatic cut, I may add, to a scene at the beef where it is pure chaos. Everyone is yelling at each other. Richie is yelling at Sydney. Everyone is arguing, and there are customers lined up. And of course, we're supposed to get that contrast. We're supposed to kind of be able to apply the last line to this specific scene. So, of course, she was talking about a situation that can become toxic, and then we cut to an immediately very toxic, very chaotic situation for Carmy. And I just think, I mean, it's genius and very well done, because you kind of can't help but feel that kind of skip in your heart where you're like, oh, gosh, this is not what this woman who was giving this monologue would want for Carmy. And Richie is yelling. Chaos is swirling. Sid and Richie are fully arguing. They are fully like at each other's throats, which is very a common theme throughout the rest of The Bear. And they're yelling in front of customers, which like truly, that's like mind blowing. If you've ever worked in customer service, I cannot imagine having a line of customers and getting into a screaming match with your coworkers. And I understand like kitchens and a lot of mainly kitchens get very heated, but you always try to keep that like in the back. And they were fully arguing in front of the customers. And it seemed like the argument was about like Richie kind of wanting to do it old school, which if you've seen the rest of The Bear or just, I don't know, kind of know Richie as a character already, you know this is kind of his thing. So it's Richie trying to do things in the old way or a way that he's done it before by like yelling orders. And Sydney is like, press the button. Like that's what the new system is. You need to press the button. We'll read it that way. And Richie is being extremely stubborn. And because of Carmy kind of trying to make a better situation happen, Sydney and Richie's tension just kind of brings everyone into it, makes it extremely, may I say, toxic. And then we go to the next scene, and it's Carmy at home. He's sitting on his bed, and he's going through the papers and the flyers that he got from Al-Anon. And that's just kind of a short scene, a little filler scene. And then we're to the next scene. And we see Carmy walk in, and he's early because someone says, like, what are you doing here so early? And he says he couldn't sleep, which is probably why I got that scene of him looking through those flyers, because he couldn't sleep. He was not sleeping. He was, reeling. So he's at work early because he couldn't sleep. And immediately he sees Marcus's station, which has pictures of all of his past work and like his past dishes that he's made at different restaurants that he'd worked at before, kind of his magnum opus of foods that he got awarded for heavily. And I just could you imagine not being able to sleep one night, coming into work, and one of your coworkers has all of your most stressful situations put up as inspiration on the wall? Could you imagine? But I do think it's very telling of kind of where Marcus is in this journey. He's obviously taken a liking to Carmy and feels very inspired by him, which I think is nice. But I could only imagine Carmy's surprise when he saw all those. He said, oh my gosh, whoa, flashbacks. And Carmy's talking about one of the dishes that apparently requires 4 sets of plums. It was a plum wine, a plum consomme, compressed plums, and gelée, a plum gelée, which the chef wanted to be the consistency of gummy bears, which for some reason is something that I think about often. Like this line from the show, I think about it anytime I see gummy bears. I'm like, wow, Carmy's head chef wanted him to make gummy bears. I think about it often. Which I just think, like, I thought that little nugget was so cool because it's very interesting how food is an art, but it truly is a science. And Sid kind of intervenes in the conversation. Carmi's saying they just could not figure out how to get the gelée to get that consistency. And Marcus is like, so how'd you get it? Like, what changed the consistency? And Sydney actually intervenes and says veal fat. And Carmi's kind of surprised, taken aback, and be like, yeah, that's exactly how. And I do wonder still, like, if that comment was because Sydney has studied Carmi so much or just Sydney's knowledge of food. I think either is admirable, but it definitely changes the context of the situation if it's because she studied Carmi's recipes or Carmi's career path, or just because she just had that in her brain and she understands how food works. Still not extremely sure. I lean more towards understanding how food works, but I think it would be really interesting if it was because of how much she studied Carmi. Because, I mean, we've seen in past episodes Carmi's influence on Sydney. So that's just a little nugget to think about. Let me know what you guys think. We see Sydney going to Carmi's office because Carmi invites her to, and Carmi suggests that they do a brigade. And I'm assuming that he came up with this because he needed to fix this very toxic, very chaotic environment, and the brigade was kind of the way to remedy that. And let me tell you, Sydney does not go for it. She's like, let's actually not make a brigade. That would, because of the situation that the restaurant is in, Sydney kind of understands that would probably just make everyone more resentful. So she's definitely not on board until Carmi is kind of a little bit bossy and basically convinces her to do it anyway. So she does. They go to the room where they usually eat the family meal, and Carmi starts handing out blue aprons, starts explaining kind of the new system they're going to be setting in place. And Richie walks in, hates the idea, says something so like insanely insensitive because he's Richie, you know, he's just a guy. And he walks in and he doesn't like it. Tina also is not on board. She's like, this looks like I like my apron better, which honestly, her apron is iconic. So like, I can't blame her, but yeah, they are just immediately not on board with the whole blue apron brigade thing. Carmi leaves and goes and answers the phone, kind of leaving Sydney in charge to explain what a brigade is. Ibra's really funny in this part. He's like, I was in a brigade once, and someone says, what happened? And he said, a lot of people died because, you know, brigade is also a military term. And I was just like, that's hilarious. But once Sydney gives him his role in the brigade, he's like, I accept, which is the Ibra line. You will see if you continue watching The Bear. If you've already seen The Bear, you know, I accept is like, first of all, so funny to me every time he says it. I think Ibra is the most underrated character. Maybe he's not, but I'm such an Ibra fan. It's wild. And like, I kind of feel like I understand him on a spiritual level, especially in these upcoming seasons and episodes. I'm just like, wow, honestly, long live Ibra. Big Ibra fan. And just a lot of funny moments throughout this entire thing where Sydney's explaining the brigade. Like, Tina says, sorry, I don't speak English. And Sydney's like, I literally know you speak English. You were just speaking English 5 minutes ago, which is just hilarious. After the whole brigade thing, we're on to the next scene where Carmi is answering the phone. The person that calls asks for Mikey, and this makes Carmi spiral, you know, it makes sense. And Richie enters and asks who was on the phone. He says it was a guy named Nico. And Richie just immediately says, I'll take care of it, which is shady. It would be shady if anyone did that. Like if they just heard a name and were like, I'll take care of it. And Carmi is immediately not doing well. He's super panicky and overwhelmed, probably because of that experience of someone calling asking for Mikey, and he does say he felt like Mikey was alive for a second. And then we see Marcus asking, like, he proposes the chocolate cake thing, which is pretty iconic later on the show. He says if we outsource bread, he can make chocolate cake or something. And it seems like Marcus really likes the brigade. He's really on board with it, which makes sense considering where his journey is in the show right now. He just put up all those pictures. So he's obviously feeling very inspired by Carmi and by food in general. So it kind of makes sense that he would like the brigade idea. And very interesting that he wants to kind of get more into desserts. So like kind of put the bread thing away, get that outsourced, and make something more creative, like a chocolate cake. Sid is saying how this will make everything go smoothly, kind of trying to get the group on board, and immediately Carmy runs out of the building, knocking a whole bunch of stuff over as he leaves, which is an obvious contrast with Sydney's line, "It will make things go smoothly." Carmy running out of the building, knocking things over, not very smooth if you ask me. We get a little food montage of Sydney prepping food, mostly cutting carrots, which, if you've watched ahead and seen more of The Bear, you know cutting carrots is it's a theme a little. It kind of comes back. And I can't wait till we get to the future seasons so that I can talk about why I keep saying all this stuff and like how it all ties back, because that's what The Bear does the best, is tying things back. Just everything is connected if you really look at it. We see after the food montage, Sydney says she actually goes into the closet, takes a big deep breath, and then exhales, and then walks out and says, "Okay, time to do checks." So she's checking everybody's station because that's her role in the brigade. Very reluctantly, like she's not into it. And throughout her checks, she like reaches out, cuts her finger on a box cutter, and the cut does not look good. Everybody's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she's just like, she's not in a good mood. So she's kind of just brushing everybody off. And Tina, who already does not like the brigade idea, is just not having it. And she ends up actually sabotaging Sydney's dish, or Sydney's stock, by turning up the heat on her stock, which is like, oh, it's just such a messed up thing to do, because it's not only affecting Sydney, it's affecting like the efficiency of the entire kitchen and maybe customers, and if the food's going to be as good as it could. Like, so annoying that she did that, but love you, Tina. But like, come on. So yeah, she does that, and she also later on doesn't prep what she's supposed to prep. And when after Carmy ran out and came back, he's checking the kitchen and he sees that the stock is like way too high, like the heat's way too high. And he gets really mad at Sydney, as we expected, as Tina expected, and kind of goes off a little. And it's like, "Say yes, chef, yes, chef." And Sydney's like, "Yes, chef." And it just makes Sydney even angrier and in a worse mood than she was before. Of course, more resentful towards Tina. Sid then cuts the onions because Tina did not do the prep work that she was supposed to, so Sydney has to take that over. And Sydney does checks again. She tastes Ibra's food and says, "Not good." And he says, "You betrayed me." Hilarious. Ibra, once again, icon. And then she goes to Marcus's station, takes a bite of the bread, says, "It's fine. If you're happy with this, I'm happy with this." And he's like, "Did I do something to make you mad?" And she's just so over it, which, like, honestly, she's so real. And that's why I like Sid. Like, she's so real. Like, she's so me. If I got yelled at, if I got put in a position where, it's not a great characteristic, but it's real. Like, when you get put in a situation that you don't want to be in, or especially if you get yelled at after being put in a situation you didn't even want to be in, you're not going to be in the best mood. You're going to kind of shut down and just be like, "Oh, I'm just trying my best, just trying to get through the day." And that was definitely Sydney's vibe through this entire thing. And of course, that does end up being addressed in this episode. She is freaking out because she can't find her onions. And she goes into Carmy's office. She's asking everybody. She's like, "Where are my onions? Have you seen my onions?" And after she asks like half the restaurant or half the staff of the restaurant, she goes into Carmy's office and says, "You wouldn't happen to know where my onions are?" And he says, "We should be outsourcing bread." And she's like, "Way ahead of you." It's a reference to the comment at the beginning of the show when they're talking with Brigade. Love when things come full circle. And this is just a great example of like the Sydney Carmy brain thing that just works better together. Like they kind of balance each other out in that way. And Sydney's just in a bad mood. She can't find her onions. Finds out that the staff sabotaged her onions and put them somewhere so she couldn't find them. And so she's just in an even worse mood. Like, can Sydney get a break this episode? Apparently not. So she's in an even worse mood. And she has to go get veal stock, and she does not want help getting veal stock, because would you want help when you're in a bad mood by people that just sabotaged you? Probably not. So she doesn't ask for help. She's like, "Marcus, don't help me. Do you ask Carmy if he needs help? Do you ask Carmy if he's okay? Stop it." And she spills it because she can't carry it because it's really heavy. And Marcus doesn't even say a word and just comes in and helps her clean it up, which, that's so nice. Carmy is in his office trying to figure out what's going on with Mikey's business, which common theme. And Marcus comes in and informs Sydney that family is up. Sydney is like nursing her cut, which honestly looks really bad. She's like washing it off. I'm like, is she okay? I really don't know. She's had a bad day. And we finally get Carmy and Sid having a talk after this chaotic day outside. And he brings her the family meal and she doesn't eat, which is in direct contrast with the first episode when Carmy is too stressed to eat. She asks him, are you going to eat? And he says no. And this is like the opposite of that. It kind of, let's get a little deep really quick, but it's kind of like, I'd like to say Sydney's initiation. There's a lot of things that kind of hinted at Sydney's initiation, like them hiding the onions or them sabotaging her dish. But I think that what really signifies the fact that Sydney is now a part of this is the fact that now the stress, unfortunately, is hers. Like, she has had to take on some of the stress from the restaurant, so now she's not eating family. So it's kind of like she's taken on a bit of Carmy's stress from the first episode, which is beautifully written. Good job to the bear. Round of applause. They talk about the day. Sydney says today was hard because Carmy literally left her in charge of this new system that she didn't even want to have in the first place. And they have a really, I think, efficient and good conversation about how Sydney just thinks they need to listen to each other and they need to be kinder to each other because they both want the same thing. They both want the restaurant to be great. And the only way that that can happen is if they compromise and if they listen to each other. And I fully agree. And we kind of get Sydney's main purpose is she wants to make a difference here. She thinks she can stand out here. She thinks she can make a difference. And that's really what she wants. And that's kind of the emphasis of their conversation. And they also say they hate doing brunch. Carmy is honest about why he left. He said he went to the Al-Anon meeting. Sydney jokes and says, sorry, I think that's a little bit too personal, which is brutal. If someone said that to me, I think I would just dig a hole and just go in it. But she's like, I'm just joking. And he's like, oh, thank goodness. And she says, I think I'm owed one after today. And honestly, you are owed one. But I was like, that's such a brutal joke. And then we get them saying like they're going to get rocked tonight because it's going to be like a crazy dinner service. And they're like, yes, absolutely. We get a little bit of B-roll of the outside of the building in Chicago. We get a voiceover of Sydney like calling out the orders, I'm assuming at dinner service. So Carmy then answers a message or listens to a message from Sugar, and this is when it's revealed that it's Mikey's birthday. Sugar just says she's thinking about him and it's Mikey's birthday and she'd like to hear from him, which makes sense. And this kind of makes everything make sense. It explains why Carmy was so panicky and like frustrated today. It explains why he had to leave and go to Al-Anon. It explains a lot about the entire episode, and I just love how beautifully that was tied up with the bow and how it kind of made everything fall into place and helped us understand kind of where Carmy's mind was at during this episode. And then we're at the scene from the beginning. Carmy's at the same place in the grass, like the crunchy grass that we talked about at the beginning, and he looks out and the sun is setting. It's a beautiful sunset. And then the credits roll. And it really brings the episode full circle. Just like how the phone call, when it was revealed that it was Michael's birthday, brought the episode full circle. The scene from the beginning being the ending scene also brings the episode full circle. And I just think it was a beautiful moment and a beautiful episode of The Bear. And I really love Sydney focused episodes, especially this one is important to me because it's one of the first Sydney focused episodes. It is like the first Sydney focused episode of The Bear, and I just think it gave so much context to why Sydney's character is so important to the other characters in the show. This one doesn't do that as much, but it kind of gives us a peek into Sydney's role for the rest of the show. And it really brought things full circle for me. And so I really liked this episode. I think they did an excellent job. Joanna Calo's directing was really excellent in this episode, and Christopher Stower's writing is always excellent. So that was season 1, episode 3, Brigade. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of The Bear the Pod. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode of The Bear. And thank you so much for listening. Like always, leave a comment if you have any questions. Just let me know what you think of the show. I love feedback. I love talking about The Bear with people that also love The Bear. It's why I started the podcast, and it's like my favorite thing to do ever. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy Friday, and I hope you have a wonderful day.